There comes a night when you can't sleep, not because you're tired, but because your dreams are tired of waiting. You lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of all the days you let pass by. You remember every time you said not yet, and every time you told yourself you needed more time, more courage, more certainty. You feel the restlessness in your bones, a quiet rebellion against the life you've been living on repeat. Frustration builds slowly, like water behind a dam. At first, it's just a trickle, a sigh when you see someone else living boldly, a pang of envy when you hear a story of risk and reward. But over time, the pressure grows. You start to feel trapped by your own hesitation, boxed in by your own excuses. Longing is a hunger that won't let you rest. It's the ache for something more, the urge to break free from the cycle of waiting and wishing. You see glimpses of the life you want in your daydreams in the quiet moments when no one is watching. And you wonder what it would feel like to finally reach for it. You realize you're not just waiting for the right moment, you're waiting for permission. Permission to want more, to try to fail, to begin. You've been taught to be patient, to be grateful, to play it safe, but now patience feels like a prison, and gratitude feels like settling for less than you're capable of. There's a moment when the urge for more becomes impossible to ignore. You feel it in your chest, in your gut, in the way your spirit stirs every time you imagine a different future. You know you can't keep living like this, half awake, half alive, always waiting for a sign that never comes. Breaking the cycle starts with a single, honest question. What am I really waiting for? You realize that no one is coming to rescue you. No one is going to hand you your dreams. If you want more, you have to reach for it yourself. You start to see the cost of waiting, the opportunities missed, the connections never made, the parts of yourself you've kept hidden. You feel the weight of all the days you let slip by, all the chances you let pass. You wonder how much longer you can stand to wait. Restlessness becomes your wake up call. It's the signal that you're ready for change, that you're hungry for something real, that you're done making excuses. You realize that the pain of standing still is finally greater than the fear of moving forward. You know it's time to act. Pause here. Feel the frustration, the longing, the urge for more inside you. Notice the places where you've been waiting, the dreams you've put on hold, the life you've been postponing. Let yourself imagine what it would feel like to break the cycle, to stop waiting, to finally begin. Ask yourself, what are you really waiting for? How much longer will you let your dreams sit in the waiting room of your life? What would it take to get tired enough of waiting that you finally move? Remember, every great story begins with a moment of restlessness, a night when you can't sleep, a day when you decide you're done waiting. This is your moment. This is the beginning of the life that awaits when you act on your dreams. Every dream worth chasing comes with a shadow. You feel it the moment you let yourself want more. The cold breath of anxiety, the whisper of self-doubt, the old ghosts of what if I fail? It's as if hope itself calls fear out of hiding, as if every new possibility must first pass through a gauntlet of questions and worry. Anxiety is the first to arrive. It creeps in quietly, tightening your chest, making your heart race, filling your mind with 1,000 worst case scenarios. You imagine every way things could go wrong, every risk that could backfire, every step that could end in a fall. You wonder if you're strong enough to handle disappointment, if you're brave enough to face the unknown. Self doubt is a master of disguise. It wears the mask of reason, of caution, of just being realistic. It tells you to wait, to plan, to make sure you're ready before you move. But underneath, it's the voice that says, who do you think you are? It's the echo of every time you were told to stay small, to be careful, to not get your hopes up. Fear of failure is the shadow that follows you everywhere. It reminds you of every time you tried and didn't make it, every time you reached and came up empty, every time you risked and the world didn't catch you. You replay your old mistakes, magnifying them until they feel like warnings carved into your memory. You start to believe that maybe it's safer not to try at all. But the truth is, failure is not the end, it's the price of admission to a life that matters. Every person you admire has a history of falling and rising, of losing and learning, of a daring and doing. You realize that the only people who never fail are the ones who never try. You begin to see that the real risk is not in failing, but in never giving yourself the chance to succeed. Fear of judgment is another shadow that clings to your dreams. You worry about what others will think if you stumble, if you change, if you dare to want more. You imagine the looks, the whispers, the silent disapproval of those who never dared themselves. You wonder if you can handle being misunderstood, if you can stand tall when others question your choices, but you start to see that judgment is a mirror, not a verdict. People judge from their own fears, their own limits, their own unchased dreams. You realize that the only approval you truly need is your own, that the only voice that matters is the one inside you that says go. The shadow side of hope is that it makes you vulnerable. To hope is to admit you care, to risk your heart, to open yourself to both joy and pain. It's easier to pretend you don't want much, to keep your dreams small and safe, to never let anyone see how much you long for more. But you know that a life without hope is a life half lived. You begin to notice the patterns of your fear, the way you talk yourself out of trying, the way you shrink from opportunities, the way you let anxiety write the script of your life. You see how many times you've let fear make your decisions, how many dreams you've left in the dark because you were afraid to bring them into the light. But you also start to see the power of facing your fear. You realize that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward anyway. You learn that every time you act in spite of fear, the shadow shrinks, the anxiety loosens, the self-doubt fades. You discover that bravery is a muscle, and every act of courage makes you stronger. You begin to talk to your fear, to listen to what it's trying to protect you from, to thank it for its concern, and then move forward anyway. You realize that fear is a sign you're on the edge of something important, that anxiety is the price of growth, that self-doubt is just a test of your resolve. You learn to use fear as fuel, to let it sharpen your focus, to let it remind you that you're alive. You start to surround yourself with reminders of what's possible, stories of people who failed and tried again, quotes that spark your courage, friends who believe in your dreams even when you can't. You build a toolkit for the hard days, a playlist, a journal, a mantra that brings you back to hope. You realize that you don't have to be fearless to begin. You just have to be willing. Pause here. Feel the anxiety, the self-doubt, the fear of failure and judgment that follows every dream. Notice the ways you've let fear hold you back, the dreams you've kept hidden, the risks you've been too scared to take. Let yourself imagine what it would feel like to move forward anyway, to act even with the shadow at your heels. Ask yourself, what fear is standing between you and your dream? What would it look like to act even if you're scared? How would your life change if you stop letting fear make your choices? Remember, every dream comes with a shadow, but you are not your fear. You are the one who dares, who tries, who moves forward anyway. You are the one who gets to decide what happens next. This is the moment you choose courage over comfort, action over anxiety, hope over hesitation. This is what happens when you let yourself dream and then dare to act, even when fear follows close behind. There's a day that comes after fear, after all the anxious nights and the second guessing. It doesn't always arrive with a shout. Sometimes it's a quiet, stubborn decision, a line drawn in the sand, a whisper in your own heart that says, enough. It's the day you stop waiting for someone else to say yes to your life. You realize you've spent years looking for approval. You've waited for a nod, a green light, a sign that it's finally your turn. You've measured your dreams against other people's comfort, your worth against their expectations, your voice against their silence. You've made yourself small so others wouldn't feel threatened, quiet so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable, agreeable, so you wouldn't be left behind. But there's a cost to living on borrowed permission. You start to feel the weight of all the times you said yes when you meant no, all the times you held your tongue, all the times you let your dreams collect dust on the shelf of maybe someday. You see how much of your life has been shaped by the fear of disappointing others, by the hope that if you just do everything right, you'll finally be allowed to want what you want. Self ownership is a revolution that begins inside you. It's the moment you decide that your life is yours to live, that your dreams are yours to chase, that your happiness is your responsibility. It's the shift from asking, is this okay, to declaring, this is what I choose. It's the courage to stand in your own authority, even if your voice shakes. You start to notice the places where you've been waiting for permission. Maybe it's the job you never applied for, the relationship you never pursued, the art you never made. Maybe it's the way you dress, the way you speak, the way you move through the world, always checking, always seeking approval, always hoping for a sign that it's safe to be yourself. But you realize that the world is full of people who will never give you permission. Some are too afraid to chase their own dreams, so they can't bear to see you chase yours. Some are too invested in the status quo, too comfortable with the way things are, too threatened by the idea of you becoming more. You see that waiting for their approval is a game you can never win. Letting go of approval is not about becoming reckless or selfish. It's about recognizing that you are the only one who can decide what matters to you, the only one who can choose your path, the only one who can give yourself the right to begin. It's about trusting your own wisdom, honoring your own desires, and believing that you are enough. You begin to claim your right to want what you want. You stop apologizing for your dreams, stop shrinking to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. You realize that your desires are not a burden, but a compass pointing you toward the life you're meant to live. You start to say yes to yourself, even if it means saying no to others. Boldness is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. It's the decision to speak your truth, to take up space, to let yourself be seen. It's the moment you stop waiting for the world to change and start changing your own world. It's the day you decide that you are worthy of your own approval. You notice how the world responds when you stop asking for permission. Some people will be uncomfortable, some will pull away, some will try to pull you back into the old patterns. But others will be drawn to your courage, inspired by your authenticity, encouraged by your example. You realize that your boldness gives others permission to be bold too. You start to see your life as a canvas, not a coloring book. You are no longer filling in someone else's lines, no longer following someone else's script. You are creating your own masterpiece, one brushstroke at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. You understand that your life is your art and you are the artist. You begin to trust your own inner authority. You listen to your intuition, honor your instincts, follow your curiosity. You realize that you don't need to justify your dreams, don't need to explain your choices, don't need to make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. You are allowed to take up space, to want more, to be more. You learn to set boundaries, not as walls, but as invitations to respect. You say no to what drains you, yes to what lights you up, and trust that the right people will understand. You realize that boundaries are not about keeping others out, but about keeping yourself in, whole, true, and free. You see that every time you honor your own needs, you teach others how to honor theirs. You start to celebrate your own milestones, to cheer for your own progress, to be your own biggest supporter. You realize that you don't need a crowd to validate your journey, don't need applause to know you're on the right path. You find joy in your own approval, pride in your own growth, peace in your own choices. You become the authority in your own life. Pause here. Feel the shift inside you, the release of old approval seeking, the rise of self ownership, the boldness of claiming your right to live fully. Notice the places where you've been waiting for permission, the dreams you put on hold, the parts of yourself you've kept hidden. Let yourself imagine what it would feel like to stop asking and start becoming. Ask yourself, where are you still waiting for someone else to say yes to your life? What would it look like to give yourself permission to want, to try, to become? How would your world change if you stopped apologizing for your dreams and started living them out loud? Remember, you are not here to live someone else's story. You are not here to wait for approval, to shrink for comfort, to ask for permission, to be yourself. You are here to claim your right, to own your choices, to live boldly and unapologetically. The day you stop asking for permission is the day you begin to live. It's the day you become the author of your own story, the leader of your own life, the dreamer who dares to act. This is the turning point. The moment you step into your power and never look back. Every journey, no matter how epic, begins with a single step. It's easy to forget this when you're staring at the mountain ahead, overwhelmed by the distance between where you are and where you want to be. You see the summit, the dream, the life you crave, and it feels impossibly far. But every story of transformation, every legend of greatness, every life that changed the world started with one small, imperfect, courageous move. Action is the spark that turns hope into momentum. It's the moment you stop thinking and start doing. The instant you move from wishing to working. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to move one foot in front of the other, one choice at a time. The magic of starting is that it breaks the spell of inertia. You can spend years waiting for the right moment, the right mood, the right sign. But the truth is, the right moment is the one you choose. The act of beginning is what creates the energy you need to keep going. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it. You feel the tremble in your hands, the doubt in your mind, the uncertainty in your heart, but you move anyway. You take the first step, not because you're fearless, but because you're tired of standing still. Momentum is built on small wins. It's the satisfaction of checking off one task, the pride of keeping one promise to yourself, the quiet thrill of progress. You realize that every step forward, no matter how tiny, is a victory over the voice that said you couldn't. You start to trust yourself, to believe in your ability to create change. You learn that action is a teacher. You discover what works and what doesn't, what excites you and what drains you, what feels right and what needs to change. You gather information, build skills, and gain confidence, not by thinking, but by doing. You realize that clarity comes from movement, not from waiting. The first step is often the hardest. It's the leap from comfort into the unknown. The moment you risk looking foolish, the instant you choose progress over perfection. You might stumble, you might fall, you might have to start over, but you know now that falling is not failing. It's learning, it's growing, it's proof that you're alive. You begin to celebrate the act of beginning. You honor the courage it takes to try, the resilience it takes to keep going, the humility it takes to start again. You realize that every great achievement is just a series of small steps repeated over and over, day after day. You see that the journey is not about giant leaps, but about steady, persistent movement. You notice how momentum builds quietly, almost invisibly. One day you look up and realize you're further than you thought, stronger than you imagined, closer than you believed. You see that the path is made by walking, that the way forward is revealed as you move. You understand that the only way to get anywhere is to begin. You start to find joy in the process. You learn to savor the small wins, to appreciate the progress, to celebrate the effort. You realize that happiness is not just at the finish line, but in every step you take along the way. You discover that the journey itself is the reward. Action creates opportunities. Doors open that you never saw before. People appear who want to help. Resources show up just when you need them. You realize that the universe responds to movement, that life rewards those who dare to act. You see that every step you take sends a signal. I am ready. I am willing. I am moving. You begin to trust the process. You stop needing to know every detail, to control every outcome, to predict every twist and turn. You learn to let go, to adapt, to flow with the journey. You realize that the path will unfold as you walk it, that the answers will come as you need them. You start to inspire others, not by being perfect, but by being in motion. People see your courage, your persistence, your willingness to try. They are encouraged by your example, motivated by your progress, uplifted by your energy. You become a living reminder that change is possible, that dreams are worth chasing, that action is the key. You learn to forgive yourself for the days you don't move, for the times you get stuck, for the moments you lose your way. You realize that every journey has detours, every path has obstacles, every dreamer has doubts. You practice self compassion, knowing that what matters most is not how fast you go, but that you keep going. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who is waiting, but as someone who is moving, not as someone who is stuck, but as someone who is growing, not as someone who's afraid, but as someone who is brave. Pause here. Feel the power of a single step in your own life. Notice the places where you've been waiting, the dreams you've put on hold, the actions you've been afraid to take. Let yourself imagine what it would feel like to move, to begin, to create momentum. Ask yourself, what is one small step you can take today towards your dream? How can you honor the courage it takes to begin, the discipline it takes to continue, the joy that comes from moving forward? What would your life look like if you trusted the power of a single step? Remember, every great journey starts with a single step. Action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Momentum is built one choice at a time, one day at a time, one brave move at a time. Let yourself begin. Let yourself move. Let yourself discover the magic that happens when you act on your dreams. This is the power of a single step. This is how you change your life. One moment, one action, one day at a time. You take that first step and then another, and suddenly the world begins to shift in ways you never imagined. It's as if the universe has been waiting for you to move, to act, to declare with your actions that you are ready for more. You realize that the life you were living was only a fraction of what was possible, that the world is wider, deeper, and more generous than you ever dared to believe. New opportunities begin to appear, not always in the ways you expected. Sometimes they arrive as a chance encounter, a conversation that sparks a new idea, a door that opens just as you're about to give up. Other times they come disguised as challenges, an obstacle that forces you to grow, a detour that leads you somewhere better, a no that makes room for a bigger yes. You start to see that every step you take creates ripples, and those ripples reach farther than you can see. Serendipity becomes a companion on your journey. You notice the way things line up when you're in motion. The right person calls at the right time. The book you need falls into your hands. The answer you've been searching for appears in a moment of stillness. You realize that luck is not just chance, but the result of showing up, of being open, of saying yes to life's invitations. You begin to trust that the universe is conspiring in your favor, that every action you take is met with a response. Unexpected blessings arrive in the spaces you once thought were empty. You find joy in places you never looked before, in the kindness of a stranger, in the laughter of a friend, in the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. You discover that abundance is not just about having more, but about seeing more, about recognizing the gifts that were always there, waiting for you to notice. You learn to celebrate the small miracles, the everyday magic, the beauty that unfolds when you least expect it. Life surprises are not always easy. Sometimes they come as storms, as losses, as endings you didn't choose. But even in the hard moments, you find gifts, strength you didn't know you had, wisdom you couldn't have learned any other way, connections that deepen in the face of adversity. You realize that every twist in the road is part of the journey, that every detour has something to teach you, that every closed door is an invitation to look for another way. You begin to see that the world is full of doors and most of them are unlocked. You just have to be willing to knock, to ask, to try. Okay. You realize that the opportunities you seek are often waiting on the other side of your comfort zone, that the life you want is just beyond the edge of your fear. You learn that courage is the key that opens every door. You notice how your perspective changes as you move forward. You stop seeing obstacles as reasons to quit and start seeing them as invitations to grow. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start making the most of what you have. You realize that the world is not fixed, but fluid, that your actions, your choices, your dreams have the power to shape reality. You start to attract people who are on a similar journey. You find yourself surrounded by dreamers, doers, believers, people who see possibility where others see problems, who encourage your growth, who celebrate your wins. You realize that community is not just about proximity, but about shared vision, shared courage, shared hope. You learn that you are not alone, that your journey is part of something bigger. Doors open that you never knew existed. A mentor appears just when you need guidance. A friend offers support when you're about to give up. A stranger becomes a partner, a collaborator, a co-creator in your dream. You realize that the world is full of allies, that help is always closer than you think. You begin to trust the timing of your life. You see that some things take longer than you hoped, that some dreams unfold slowly, that some blessings arrive only after you've let go of your need to control. You learn to be patient, to be present, to be grateful for the journey as it is, not just as you wish it would be. You discover that the world has its own rhythm, its own wisdom, its own way of bringing you what you need. You find yourself saying yes to things you once would have ignored. You take risks, try new things, follow your curiosity. You realize that every yes is a doorway, every new experience a chance to grow, every adventure an opportunity to discover more of who you are. You learn that the world rewards those who are willing to show up, to participate, to engage fully with life. You start to see abundance everywhere, not just in material things, but in experiences, in relationships, in moments of joy. You realize that abundance is a mindset, a way of seeing the world, a choice to focus on what's possible instead of what's missing. You learn to celebrate what you have, to share what you can, to trust that there is always more on the way. You notice how your dreams evolve as you move forward. What once seemed impossible now feels within reach. What once felt like a distant hope now feels like a real possibility. You realize that the world is not static, that your dreams can grow, change, and expand as you do. You learn to let go of old limitations, to embrace new possibilities, to trust the unfolding of your journey. You begin to inspire others, not by having all the answers, but by being willing to ask the questions, to take the risks, to live the adventure. People see your courage, your openness, your willingness to embrace the unknown. They are encouraged by your example, motivated by your progress, uplifted by your energy. You become a living reminder that the world is full of surprises, that life is richer than you ever imagined. Pause here. Feel the new opportunities around you, the serendipity in your days, the unexpected blessings that have come your way. Notice the doors that have opened, the people who have appeared, the ways your life has changed since you started moving. Let yourself celebrate the world you never saw coming, the world that was waiting for you all along. Ask yourself, What new opportunities are you willing to say yes to? How can you open yourself to life's surprises, to serendipity, to unexpected blessings? What would it look like to trust that the world is on your side, that abundance is your birthright, that doors are waiting to open for you? Remember, the world you never saw coming is not a fantasy. It's the reality that unfolds when you act on your dreams. It's the life that rewards your courage, your persistence, your willingness to move. It's the adventure that begins the moment you say yes to yourself. Let yourself be surprised. Let yourself be amazed. Let yourself discover the world that was waiting for you all along. This is what happens when you act on your dreams. The world opens up and you realize you were always meant for more. Struggle is the part of the story no one wants to talk about. It's the chapter you wish you could skip, the pain you hope to avoid, the storm you pray will pass quickly. But if you look closely, you'll see that every hero's journey, every dream worth chasing, every life that truly changes runs straight through the heart of struggle. Resilience is not born in comfort. It's forged in the fire of adversity, in the moments when you're knocked down and have to decide whether you'll get up again. It's the quiet determination to keep moving, even when the path is steep, even when your muscles ache, even when your heart is tired. You learn that strength is not about never falling, but about rising every single time you do. You start to see struggle differently. It's no longer just an obstacle, but a teacher. Every setback holds a lesson, every disappointment, a hidden gift, every failure, a chance to grow. You realize that the hardest days are the ones that shape you most, that the pain you endure becomes the wisdom you carry. Learning is the silver lining in every challenge. You discover what you're made of, what you value, what you're willing to fight for. You learn to adapt, to improvise, to find new ways forward when the old ones are blocked. You realize that every struggle is an invitation to become more than you were before. Growth is not a straight line. It's a series of climbs and falls, of leaps and stumbles, of breakthroughs and breakdowns. You learn to celebrate progress, not perfection, to honor the journey, not just the destination. You see that every scar is a story, every wound a window, every bruise a badge of courage. You begin to understand that rising after falling is the true measure of strength. It's easy to keep going when things are smooth, when the sun is shining, when the road is clear. But real power is found in the moments when you're tempted to quit, when you're face down in the dirt, when you have every reason to give up and you choose to rise anyway. You notice how your perspective shifts as you move through struggle. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as a creator of your own story. You realize that you have the power to choose your response, to shape your attitude, to decide what meaning you give to your pain. You learn that you are not defined by what happens to you, but by how you rise in response. Becoming unbreakable is not about being invincible. It's about being flexible, about bending without breaking, about finding strength in your softness, courage in your vulnerability, hope in your darkest hours. You learn to trust yourself, to believe in your ability to survive, to know that you can handle whatever comes. You start to see the beauty in your scars. They are not signs of weakness, but of survival. They are proof that you have lived, that you have loved, that you have dared to dream. You wear them with pride, knowing that every mark is a testament to your resilience. You begin to appreciate the struggle for what it gives you. It teaches you patience, humility, empathy. It connects you to others who are fighting their own battles, who are learning their own lessons, who are growing in their own ways. You realize that struggle is the great equalizer, the common ground on which we all stand. You learn to ask for help, to lean on others, to let yourself be supported. You discover that strength is not about going it alone, but about building a community, about sharing the load, about lifting each other up. You see that vulnerability is not a weakness, but a bridge, a way to connect, to heal, to grow together. You notice how your resilience inspires others. People see your courage, your persistence, your willingness to keep going. They are encouraged by your example, motivated by your progress, uplifted by your energy. You become a living reminder that struggle is not the end, but the beginning of something new. You start to find meaning in your pain. You realize that every challenge has shaped you, every loss has refined you, every hardship has prepared you for what's next. You learn to trust the process, to believe in the journey, to know that everything you've been through has a purpose. You see that the struggle is not a detour, but the path itself. You begin to celebrate your resilience. You honor the days you kept going when you wanted to quit, the moments you chose hope over despair, the times you rose after falling. You realize that every act of persistence is a victory, every step forward a triumph, every breath a testament to your strength. You learn to forgive yourself for the times you faltered, for the days you lost faith, for the moments you doubted your worth. You realize that self compassion is the foundation of resilience, that kindness to yourself is the fuel that keeps you moving. You practice gratitude for your journey, for your growth, for your ability to rise. You start to see yourself as unbreakable, not because you never been, but because you always return to center, always find your way back, always rise again. You realize that your strength is not in your perfection, but in your persistence. You understand that the struggle is not your enemy, but your ally. Pause here. Feel the strength in your spirit, the resilience in your bones, the hope in your heart. Notice the struggles you've survived, the lessons you've learned, the ways you've grown. Let yourself honor the journey, the struggle, the rise. Ask yourself, what have you learned from your struggles? How can you show yourself more compassion when you fall? What would it look like to rise again and again, no matter how many times you stumble? Remember, you are not defined by your struggles, but by your willingness to rise. You are not measured by your mistakes, but by your courage to keep going. You are not alone in your struggle. Every dreamer, every doer, every believer has walked this path. The strength you find in the struggle is the heart of every great story. It's the proof that you are alive, that you are brave, that you are becoming. It's what happens when you act on your dreams and refuse to give up no matter what. Let yourself be proud of your resilience. Let yourself celebrate your growth. Let yourself trust the strength you found in the struggle. This is how you become unbreakable. This is how you build a life that lasts. This is the gift that struggle gives you, the strength to rise again and again, no matter what comes. There is a moment after all the struggle, after all the risk, after all the nights you almost gave up, when you look in the mirror and see someone you barely recognize. Not because you are lost, but because you have finally found yourself. You see the lines of courage etched into your face, the light of hope shining in your eyes, the quiet confidence in your posture. You realize you are no longer just chasing a dream, you are living it. Transformation is not a single leap, but 1,000 small choices. It's the decision to rise after every fall, to keep moving when the path is unclear, to trust yourself when no one else does. It's the willingness to let go of who you were, to make space for who you are becoming, to believe that you are worthy of the life you want. You understand now that every step, every setback, every act of courage has shaped you into someone new. You begin to feel fulfillment in places you never expected. It's not just in the big wins or the moments of applause, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing you showed up for yourself. It's in the mornings when you wake up excited for the day, in the evenings when you rest with a sense of peace. It's in the way you treat others, the way you honor your word, the way you carry yourself through the world. Living your vision is not about perfection. It's about authenticity, about being true to your values, about making choices that align with your deepest desires. You realize that your dream was never just about what you could have, but about who you could become. You see that the real reward is not the destination, but the journey, the growth, the learning, the becoming. You start to notice the ripple effect of your transformation. People around you begin to change, inspired by your courage, motivated by your persistence, uplifted by your energy. You become a living example of what's possible, a beacon of hope for those still searching for their own path. You realize that your story matters not just to you, but to everyone who needs to know that change is possible. You begin to inspire others, not by having all the answers, but by being willing to ask the questions, to take the risks, to live the adventure. You share your struggles, your setbacks, your small victories. You show that it's possible to fall and rise, to hope and act, to dream and do. You become proof that courage changes everything. Legacy is not built in a day. It's built in the small daily acts of showing up, of choosing growth over comfort, of living with intention. It's the ripple you create every time you encourage someone else, every time you share your story, every time you light the way for another dreamer. You understand now that your journey is not just about you. It's about everyone who will come after. You start to see your life as a message. Every setback you've overcome, every fear you've faced, every hope you've dared to hold becomes a chapter in a story that matters. You realize that your scars are not signs of weakness, but of survival. You wear them with pride, knowing they are proof that you kept moving, kept believing, kept becoming. You begin to see yourself as a leader, not because you have all the answers, but because you are willing to go first. You are willing to be vulnerable, to be real, to be seen. You understand that leadership is not about standing above, but about walking beside, about lifting others as you climb. You become the person who says, "Come with me." There's room for you here. You notice how your vision expands as you grow. What once felt impossible now feels within reach. What once seemed like distant hope now feels like a real possibility. You realize that the world is not static, that your dreams can grow, change, and expand as you do. You learn to let go of old limitations, to embrace new possibilities, to trust the unfolding of your journey. You begin to celebrate your own milestones, to cheer for your own progress, to be your own biggest supporter. You realize that you don't need a crowd to validate your journey, don't need applause to know you're on the right path. You find joy in your own approval, pride in your own growth, peace in your own choices. You become the authority in your own life. You start to trust your own inner authority. You listen to your intuition, honor your instincts, follow your curiosity. You realize that you don't need to justify your dreams, don't need to explain your choices, don't need to make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. You're allowed to take up space, to want more, to be more. You learn to set boundaries, not as walls, but as invitations to respect. You say no to what drains you, yes to what lights you up, and trust that the right people will understand. You realize that boundaries are not about keeping others out, but about keeping yourself in, whole, true, and free. You see that every time you honor your own needs, you teach others how to honor theirs. You start to see your life as a canvas, not a coloring book. You are no longer filling in someone else's lines, no longer following someone else's script. You are creating your own masterpiece, one brush stroke at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. You understand that your life is your art and you are the artist. You begin to trust the process. You stop needing to know every detail, to control every outcome, to predict every twist and turn. You learn to let go, to adapt, to flow with the journey. You realize that the path will unfold as you walk it, that the answers will come as you need them. You start to inspire others, not by being perfect, but by being in motion. People see your courage, your persistence, your willingness to try. They are encouraged by your example, motivated by your progress, uplifted by your energy. You become a living reminder that change is possible, that dreams are worth chasing, that action is the key. You learn to forgive yourself for the days you don't move, for the times you get stuck, for the moments you lose your way. You realize that every journey has detours, every path has obstacles, every dreamer has doubts. You practice self compassion, knowing that what matters most is not how fast you go, but that you keep going. You begin to see yourself differently, not as someone who is waiting, but as someone who is moving, not as someone who is stuck, but as someone who is growing, not as someone who is afraid, but as someone who is brave. Pause here. Feel the transformation in your bones, the fulfillment in your heart, the vision in your mind. Notice the people you are inspiring, the lives you are touching, the hope you are spreading. Let yourself be proud, not just of what you've achieved, but of who you've become. Ask yourself, who are you becoming for the next dreamer? What legacy are you building with your life? How can you use your story, your strength, your journey to light the way for someone else? Remember, you are not just the dreamer, you are the dream fulfilled. You are not just the seeker, you are the guide. You are not just the survivor, you are the living proof that dreams can come true. Becoming the person you dreamed of is the highest calling. It's the moment you realize that your life is bigger than your fears, stronger than your failures, more beautiful than you ever imagined. It's the day you understand that your journey is a gift, a lesson, well, a legacy. This is your climax, your arrival, your new beginning. You are the inspiration you once searched for. You are the hope you once needed. You are the light that will guide the next dreamer home. And as you keep moving forward, keep dreaming, keep becoming, remember, the world is waiting for your story. The world is hungry for your light. The world is changed by your courage to dream, to act, to become. This is the life that awaits when you act on your dreams. This is the legacy you leave, the vision you live, the person you become.